Okay, it's Kevin Lockett once again. If you notice, I kind of jumped into this. It's because I've been talking to Joe Pulizzi. We were talking about hotels, so we had a fun time. I was like, oh my god, I got to do a podcast. So how you doing today, Joe?
I'm doing great, Kevin. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to talk to a fellow Northeast Ohio members trying to, we're doing it. We're making it. We're representing this area. So, as we were talking beforehand as well about Cleveland is Akron the best place to do business. So I guess it depends on where you're coming from, but I love it.
As a spokesperson from Akron, I'm going to say yes. All my friends on the West Coast will say no because it's warm. Kevin, it's warm. Why you have to do this? No, it's nice.
It's like, well, here's the thing, and you know this. If you have your friends that have actually been to this area, they'll say, "Oh, I really like it." Depends, like, what are they going for? They're going for like the park system. They're like the sports. Like, the arts are great in this area, but they've experienced it. But if you talk to somebody who's never been to Cleveland or had never been to Northeast Ohio or Akron, they'll be like, "Why do you live in that area?" They have no concept. So that's why you have to bring them here at least once so they can experience what it is to be living in Cleveland. It's a totally different thing.
Okay, I didn't think it was going to get into this, but you're absolutely right. Because I think people have because I hear people, especially if you're from the coast, right? If you're from LA, New York, Chicago, Atlanta, and Miami, for some odd reason, it's like they lump Cleveland and Akron into like if we're in Idaho someplace. And no offense to my people in Idaho, I'm sure you're fine. But like we got 3 sports teams, we got fine restaurants, like you say, we got parks. Like it's actually a nice area. And people say, "Oh, it gets cold." Well, it's cold in New York. It's cheaper.
It's cold. Yeah, I mean, it's the same weather as Chicago, but less wind. So like and everybody talks about Chicago. It's funny because this is when we had our big event, Content Marketing World, and I had friends from Sydney, Australia flying in. And they said they were flying in, they were about ready to touch down, and they were over a body of water, Lake Erie, as we know. But they literally said, "I thought you were in the middle of the United States, and there was no water." They didn't even have a clue. And then when you show them, it's like, yeah, look at Edgewater Park here. We're right on the water. It's glorious. There's boats out. It's really nice in the summertime. But yeah, if you don't know, you don't know. What are you going to do?
What are you going to do? Speak about Content Marketing World. I don't think I ever asked anybody this question. So I interviewed you a long time ago when I had my old podcast. And at that time, you had the Content Marketing Institute, you had Content Marketing World, and then you sold that. And then you had Tilt, and you sold that. So I have a question because I've never sold anything but things on eBay. Whenever you have a company and you sell it, how does that work? Do people come to you and say, "Hey, we like your company, we'd like to buy it," or is there like almost like a real estate type of brokerage type situation, saying like, "Hey, I might be interested in selling my company. Can you see if there's any feelers out there?" How does that work when you sell your company?
So the answer is all of the above. I have friends of mine that have been approached, and I have other ones that have put a plan together for sale, and they work with somebody to find possible buyers of that organization. With the way that we did it with Content Marketing Institute and Content Marketing World is I always had to go. So my wife and we own the company. I always had a goal since 2008 that I wanted to sell this thing. And we got it to a point in 2015 where I'm like, okay, the revenues, the profit are in line. If we have an exit here, we think we're going to get the type of exit that we want that's going to be profitable for us. So over, I would say, Kevin, about a 4-year period, I started making a list of people who I think would want to buy. Mm-hmm. And I started to go to events where they were, and I would meet them, and I would have a relationship with them. So what happened is when we went out to sale, and we went out with a memorandum, and I approached about 8 or 9 people. And I just sent I didn't want it out in the public. Like I didn't want everybody to know that we were selling, but I went out with an email to these 8 or 9 people. And because I already had a relationship with them, I already had them on my list, was working this for years. And I said, "Hey, I'm selling Content Marketing Institute. Would you be interested in seeing the memorandum on it?" And that would be it. And I think 5 got back and said they did. And then I sent that to my financial advisor, and I was out of that picture. And then we worked a whole system until we started getting bids in, which was about 3 months later. But that was it. See, a lot of people don't do it that way. But if you strategically think about selling your business, you can get away. I mean, that's the best way to do it because you don't have to open it to a lot of people. These are exactly the type of companies that you want to sell to. With the Tilt, Kevin, it was totally different. It was our biggest sponsor was Lulu. and they were thinking about launching their own event for content creators and content entrepreneurs. And I had started to have a real good relationship with the key member of Lulu. His name's Matt Brill. He's VP of marketing over there. We started talking about it, and he's telling me he might want to do an event like CEX. And I said, you know what? Why don't you just buy this event? That's literally how it happened, Kevin. Because I was already, I was already thinking about, I was thinking about exiting again. I didn't want to, I've done the whole thing about, creating the content brand and the event. And I was like, okay, I got to get out of this thing. And we just started talking. And over a 3-month period, I met with the founder of Lulu and the CEO, and we just had these conversations. And they started to think, yeah, I think there's a really good fit. They wanted to do this imprint called Tilt, they wanted to do an imprint for content creators, which became Tilt Publishing. And so we packaged it all together, and it took about 6 months to make that happen. Really, that was a really easy sale because you're just working with one organization. It wasn't out for bid. The one with Content Marketing Institute, that was like, we got the letter of intent. I remember it was in November of 2015. That thing didn't close until June of 16. And I must have done, I don't know, 60 or 70 different spreadsheets of financials that lined up with theirs so that they could make sure. So anyways, there's lots of different ways to do it. But my lesson out of this whole thing would be, if that's something, if you want an exit strategy that's to sell a company, you don't just say one day, hey, I'm going to sell. You got to think about it for a while. You got to think about the types of companies that would give you the money that would make sense, the kinds of ones that would take care of your brand and wants to move forward with the business and grow that business and not just kill it. So a lot of things come into play, and planning is the way to go, instead of just, I'm done, let's sell. Because a lot of companies, small businesses, whatever, doesn't have to be a media company, they don't have an exit plan. And then something happens where the owner gets sick, or some family member, or there's a cash crisis and they have to sell. Those are the worst times to sell, because you are a desperation sell, and you're going to sell for whatever figure you want to sell for. And then you're like, well, you get what you get.
Man, speaking of CEX, so CEX is coming up in May, and that's the Content Entrepreneurs Expo. And BJ Novak from The Office is the featured speaker. You have Latasha James, who I watch quite often on YouTube. Mm-hmm. So let's say, because you did this, you did quite a few conferences in Cleveland. Let's say, because I brought up Idaho before, let's say someone in Idaho said, you know what, I like to create my own type of content marketing conference, or my own type of conference in general. What should people know if they're trying to put together a conference or an expo? Because it looks easy, because people fly in, it's like, oh my God, this is fantastic. But there's a lot of work involved in putting together something like that.
So the hardest thing to do with an event has nothing to do with the logistics of an event. It's getting people to the event. That is the marketing of the event is the number one thing. It's like 99%. Now, granted, our event team is unbelievable. They do an outstanding job. I think it's first-rate customer service. You come in, you can feel the excitement that we've got really good, food and drink, and everything's structured and organized the right way. But if you don't get people there, none of that matters. So my recommendation would be, if you're going to do an event of any size, you've got to make sure that you have a list of relationships of people that will actually go to an event. Because let's say that you have 1,000 people on your email list. Well, maybe of that 1,000, you might get 3 or 4 people to go to an event. Like you need, unless it's a local event or something like that. If it's a national event, you got to remember, if you're, let's say, if you were going to go to CEX and you're going to pay our early bird rate, which I think was $495 to go, you might think, I don't know where you're coming from. You might say, oh, that's a good deal, or that's expensive. That's minimal cost depending on your travel and travel costs to get out to that location, which you can probably times 3 with the airfare and the hotel and whatever. So that's the barrier to entry, if you will, for getting people to go, because they're going to spend $2,000 probably just to go to an event, spending all the things they're spending. So it's very hard to get somebody to an in-person event. I would say you want to get as many partners together that can help promote this thing, and you can come at it as like this isn't a real event. We did that with Content Marketing World. So in 2010, we announced that we were going to do an event in Cleveland, Content Marketing World. And I was hoping, my wife and I were hoping, could we get 100 people to come to Cleveland, Ohio for this international content marketing event? And Kevin, I got to be honest with you, I was not sure. We had the email newsletter database. We had really good relationships. We felt it was the right time, but we didn't know. Lucky enough, we got 600 people to that first year event, which was September of 2011. I think in a lot of cases, because I had lots of dinners, I had lots of meetings with people in Cleveland about how important this was to Cleveland, not only to content marketing, not only to marketing and advertising industry in Cleveland, but in Northeast Ohio, but this was important for all of us. And I figured out a way, like, how can I get the agencies involved? How can I get the media companies involved? And we did a really good job of that. And they were all started to talk about it for 6 months in advance so that people could have enough time to pull the trigger and actually go to the event. So I would say, how's your marketing? Like, do you have a list of people that are willing to go? You might want to send out a survey or two to see if they'd be willing to do it. Because even if they say they're going to do it, you don't know if they're actually going to pull the trigger and make it happen. We got lucky with Content Marketing World, where we had 600 the first year. And I think by 2015, we had 4,000, which doesn't happen. Like, we were riding the wave of content marketing. We were first to content marketing education. We were first to really building an audience around that. And so it helped us, but it's not easy to get that. So that's why I would start small, start with a pilot event, see how it goes, get some excitement around it. And then you might say, okay, we can do something bigger after that.
You mentioned your wife a couple of times. So how important has she been in your journey, in your content marketing journey?
Is this on? Is this a trick question? Who's listening to this? First of all, I love her to death. She's my best friend. And we've run 2 businesses, and she has been the operational mind behind both of them. So Kevin, I'm a very strategic person. I love to speak. I love to write. I love to get out in front of people. I love to come up with really crazy ideas and see if they're going to work. When I come up with an idea that I think is going to work, then I go to my wife and I say, will this work? Like, what do you, and like, she's the realist. And then if we agree that it's going to work, she puts the operational plan together, make sure we have the right human resource to make it happen, puts the team together. I mean, when we had up to 28 people working with us at Content Marketing Institute, and she was the glue. Like, she was the one that would send notes to them and make sure that the team was feeling good about each other, and put the little vacations together. There was one time we took everybody down to St. Thomas to like celebrate our success together. And we had she put all that together. So yeah, I mean, we wouldn't be talking right now if she wasn't a part of this. And that's, I guess, for any business owner. So I've been an entrepreneur since 2007. You have to figure out what you're really good at and you like to do, and what you're not good at and what you don't like to do. And what you're not good at and you don't like to do, you have to find some people to do that for you, or you're not going to be successful. So yeah, it's her money, by the way. It's not like we sold and we had a really good exit. Not my money. Like, when I want money, I go ask her, can I have some money? It's her money. She deserves it. And we're just having a great time.
You have a permission to edit this down and put this on a loop and give this to her on your anniversary. Said, honey, happy anniversary.
She does not like when I talk about her. So I have my own personal newsletter that you can get. It's called Orange Letter at joepulizzi.com. And there were like 3 newsletters in a row where I kept talking about her. And I remember in my office, I'm upstairs right now as I'm talking to you in our home office. And I went downstairs and she was in the living room, and she just read the newsletter, and she said, you have to stop talking about me, like, no more. So, okay. And then I think the next newsletter I said, she who will not be named. Like, I always, it's a like, my newsletter it's very much about content creation, business, and finance, but I always add in personal things. And when it's hard not to put your significant other in those. So we have fun with it.
Right. That's good. All right, let's jump into the content entrepreneur. I'm going to bounce around a bit because I was going to ask this question later. But you mentioned Orange, and you always have something signature orange on. But let's say you're a person, and let's say you are a content creator, content entrepreneur. You're actually doing something that's working. You have an audience, but you really don't know what your brand is. Like some people are not good at branding. Your brand is definitely is content marketing one, but also is orange. Orange is something that people can tie into you. So what do you do if you don't know what your brand is?
Well, I think it comes back to if you've read any of what Simon Sinek has done, it's kind of start with your why. Like what is your mission for your business? And as for a content business, as a content creator, we call that what's your content mission statement? Like who is your specific audience? What are you trying to deliver? And what is the outcome you're trying to create? Are you trying to help them to get a better job, live a better life? You know, what is your why? What are you trying to do out there? And I think if you don't know that, you better step back a little bit and figure out why you're doing this, because I'm under the assumption, if you're talking about just a general example, most content creators, they're in such competitive industries, it's very hard to differentiate. They're talking about a lot of the same things. By the way, this is content marketing as well. All companies out there, if they're creating content, they're doing podcasts, blogs, newsletters. For the most part, they're too broad. They're targeting too wide of an audience. The content niche is it's just where you have hundreds of competitors doing the same thing. It's never going to get traction. So you kind of have to pull back and say, all right, let's find what I call a content tilt. So this is the best way to explain this is that you, as let's say your brand, you have some expertise, you have some knowledge that is over and above what other people. So mine would be publishing, marketing, content marketing, books, e-newsletters, those types of things. And then on the other side, you've got, okay, who's your audience and what's their pain points? What keeps them up at night? In the intersection of those two, hopefully you have some kind of an editorial mission of why you're doing your thing. Like the Tilt's editorial mission is that we're trying to give how-to strategic advice to content creators so they can become content entrepreneurs, which are full-time, financially independent content creators. So that is our mission. So you need that kind of mission. But what a lot of people don't do is they don't take the extra step is you have to find that content tilt, that differentiation that you can cut through all that clutter out there, because there's more clutter today than there was yesterday. It's very hard to break through and build an audience. So what is that? Part of mine is, of course, you mentioned the orange, and that I started with that in 2008, 2009, and it took off and I went all in on it. Anything that you can embrace your weird and embrace what makes you, wonderful. Instead of calling the industry custom publishing and custom media and corporate publishing like everybody else was doing from the start of time, from the beginning of the whole practice to 2007, I went out and started pushing this term called content marketing. Nobody was using that term, but I really felt that would be a differentiation for us, that people would gravitate toward that term. And it took like 3 or 4 years, Kevin, but it worked out really well. And that was part of our differentiation. So I would just say whatever you can do, you can differentiate by platform. I talked to someone yesterday who, instead of doing a YouTube channel, decided to do their channel on Spotify video. And I asked them, why are you doing that? And said, because there's less competition there in our niche. And I feel there's an opportunity to get more attention and build more audience. That's it. Like, think about those types of things. You may not say, hey, I'm going to be on TikTok. I'm going to do YouTube. I'm going to do Instagram. Maybe your thing is an email newsletter. Maybe it's an in-person event series. Excuse me. So all these things, if you think about them, will separate you from the pack, whatever that is. And so you can do it by platform, by content topic, by audience. So that's probably a longer answer than you wanted, but this is where most creators, most business people fail, because they don't think to differentiate first what's going to build that audience, and then how do I understand that audience better than anyone else so that I can identify the products to serve them.
Right. In the Content Entrepreneur book, you have a very distinct difference between a content entrepreneur and a content creator. Because most people say, like, well, I'm a content creator.
Yeah.
But you say there's a distinct difference between the two. What's the difference between an entrepreneur, content creator, and you know what I'm saying?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we talked about it a little bit. So I don't know what a content creator is, which is why I have trouble with the term, because a content creator are almost all of us. My mom, who posts on Facebook, is a content creator. She's creating original content, putting it on a platform to an audience. So it could be a hobbyist. It could be just an individual out there it could be somebody that's serious about, I don't know. It could be somebody that's on all the platforms and on one platform. It doesn't tell me anything about the motives of the content creator. And that's why we've used the term content entrepreneur, because that means first and foremost, it's a business. This is someone that's trying to be financially independent. They're trying to create generational wealth for them and their family through this idea of building an audience by generating and distributing specific content to an audience. That's it. That's all. That's what you're trying to do. So that's why I like the whole idea of content entrepreneur, because you're saying business first, but I'm doing it through this idea of building an audience through content creation. And so I'm totally partial to it. Most people probably don't know that term or understand it, but it is picking up steam, because I think a lot of people don't realize that being a content creator is not easy. It's just like any other business. It takes time. There's a lot of people that are failing out there. I know a lot of my friends that are really struggling because of some of the things we talked to. They don't have a content tilt. They're not distributing content on a regular basis. They haven't figured out the right partnerships. They haven't figured out the right revenue mix yet. It's a very difficult challenge. It's just that we don't have a lot of overhead. Like, we're not building, we're not manufacturing anything, but we're trying to create enough attention. And with that attention, then we can sell things like, oh, I can sell advertising, or I can do my own events, or I can do an affiliate program, or I can take donations, or I can create books and sell books or premium content products. And that's kind of how, or coaching. A lot of our people that are coming to CEX this year are coaches and consultants, because that's sort of the low hanging fruit for content entrepreneurs.
Speaking about, oh man, there's so many things I want to ask you. There was a lot of interesting stats in that book. And one of the things that was interesting, I always felt like, for the most part, affiliate marketing, people made most of their money off affiliate marketing, but you had a chart. And most of the people, the number one was, I think, was it coaching? Like, is it coaching, consulting was one, and courses and books. Like, those are the things that people actually make their most money on when it comes to content creators, entrepreneurs. And affiliate marketing is like fourth on the list, which kind of shocked me.
It's interesting. I think that if you ask somebody that's not in the industry at all and you say, how does a content creator make money? They probably would say advertising from YouTube or on Instagram, right? Or TikTok. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with that. You can, but most of us don't make a lot of money that way, and we have no control over that. So what we try to do, and what our tilt is, if you will, for CEX, is what we're trying to do is say, look, social media is fine and great, but it's also fleeting. The algorithms are against us. So I wake up every day as a content entrepreneur thinking, oh, good, I still have access to my social channels. I can still use X and I can still use Instagram and whatever, but those might get taken away. I could get blocked. Algorithm might not promote my content. I can't count on those as much as I could anymore. So we use those as promotional tools, but really what we want to do is have control over the distribution so that we can deliver this to our audience and we can be sure they're going to get it. Email newsletters, memberships, training, books, those types of things where somebody's going to buy something. I get that information and I can actually send them and deliver them the content. Podcasts are good as well, because once I get somebody subscribed to my podcast, they're not going to block me. I mean, who knows what's going to happen with Apple and Spotify, but I feel pretty good about those types of things. So we're trying to take control over the distribution. And that is the toughest thing, where I see more and more creators that are sort of beholden to, no, okay, well, that's what YouTube changed their algorithm again. One friend of mine totally got kicked off his platform. It was some big misunderstanding, but they couldn't get access to their 80,000 subscribers. It totally killed their business. So these are the things that we want to make sure that don't happen. So we're really a fan of those memberships and email newsletters. And to your point about revenue, it's not just one thing. Like with Content Marketing Institute and growing that, we probably had revenue of about $10 million in 2015. So half of that were live events. Our big event was Content Marketing World, but we sold sponsorships to webinars. We had seat training. We sold training to our Content Marketing University. We had an award program where people could submit for their awards. We had podcast advertising. We sold books. So we sold a lot of different consulting and coaching. So that's sort of like you think about diversification of somebody who is doing real well for themselves. They make money lots of different ways. If you are not doing well, let's say, I don't say not doing well, but if you just have a job working for one company and that's the only way you make money, it's going to be tough to be a multimillionaire. It just is, because you're just getting, unless you're a CEO or something like that. But most of us are just getting a paycheck. If you look at what millionaires do, they buy land, the real estate, they get revenue from them. They're renting out that land. They've got stocks and they've got bonds and maybe they got cryptocurrency. They got lots of different ways that they're making money. So that's what I want content creators to think about. So they want to be content entrepreneurs, is lots of focus on few platforms that you're really, really good at to distribute your content, and focus on many, many different ways to make money.
You did something interesting, really interesting with the book. Usually when anybody writes any book about content, they kind of go with tips about content first, and then at the end they talk about the business, so how to set up your business. You totally flip that around. The content stuff, I mean, you had your intro, but the early chapters kind of dealt with setting up your business first, which I'd never seen before. Usually that comes last, because most people who are content people, we just think of content, being creative, getting an audience, building a brand. Why did you decide to go with the business part first, to have people almost change their mindset about being a content entrepreneur?
I think that just happened naturally, Kevin, because of the idea that we have to push this thing, that this is a business. Where we find, when I have the opportunity to mentor a lot of want to be content entrepreneurs, and most of their time and effort and everything they do is around content creation, distribution, and promotion, which is great, but that's not even half the business. You've got, how are you going to set up sales, operationalize your marketing? What is your long-term marketing plan for this? How did you set up the business? Do you have an exit strategy for what you're going to do ongoing? Those types of things are critical, and every other business does it. But for some reason, if you just start creating videos on YouTube, we don't think about, they sort of back into the business. It's like, oh, this is starting to get serious. I might have to set up an LLC, which is totally fine. However you get into it is fine with me. But you got to realize that there's some things you could do up front. I mean, you probably read, there's a great legal chapter in the beginning that I think a lot of people don't understand, that legally there's things you can do up front to protect yourself, your IP, your company, because that's what you are. You are a business. So that's more than anything else, and more than all the content creation chapters, which we have some, and we've got a lot on social media and things like that. I want people to say, oh, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to do the greatest job or career on the planet right now, and I believe that is to be a content entrepreneur, and to set your own schedule, and to talk to people like yourself, and you can use your creativity to generate an audience and monetize that. I want to make sure that they can do that long term, and to do that long term, you have to understand that there's business operational aspects that you have to set up as soon as you possibly can.
Right. In the book, it was a crazy stat, but if I was a kid, I probably would think this way too. I think you say like 3/4 of kids or teens would rather be a YouTuber or a content creator than be an astronaut. And my old head was saying, oh, that's insane. My young head said, if I was in this generation, absolutely. Like I'm seeing Mr. Beast, and you see all the stuff he's doing to Jake Paul, Logan Paul, these guys. Even though Mr. Beast forever, he started a long time ago to get to this point. If you're a parent and you have a kid that's really into being a content creator, how do you tell this kid, on one hand, go ahead and create your content, but at the same time, you also got to be somewhat realistic, because, like I said, you might be a successful person, but it might take 5 to 10 years. So how can you slightly change a kid's mindset where you can create content, but you also got to keep an eye on your life, your career, and your education at the same time?
Well, I have a few of my friends that that are sort of shepherding their kids through this process. I talked to one yesterday, and I think the kid is 11 or 12 years old, and is doing that Spotify video that I was talking to you about. And they set up an LLC, with the father sort of taking the LLC and making sure that's all set up correctly. But the kid is taking their free time outside of school to learn, how do I do video editing? What makes the best shot? How do I look at my like all these things? And it's great. And you lean into it. Don't get too serious about it, because the minute you get too serious about it with kids, they'll go do something else. I would just say lean into whatever their passions are at this point. You don't want to say, oh, this is good. If this is going to be a business, you got to take this seriously. if they're 11, 12 years old or even 18, like, come on, like, you got to be a kid. But I mean, I love the fact that, I've got 2 kids, 20 and 22, and they were very involved online. And, of course, we talked about different things that they could do. Let them learn, let them go to what their passions are. If it's video editing, if it's audio editing, if it's figuring things out, I would just say, be careful with getting their name and picture out there. So what I would do, I mean, if let's say I have a younger child that's interested in doing something today, I would try to create a brand that does not require their face or can keep them anonymous. Like almost like Mr. Beast. Like when it's interesting. Mr. Beast is Jimmy. His name is Jimmy Donaldson, but he went out as Mr. Beast, and of course it was his face. But if I had to do it again, like if I was doing some, I'm doing a YouTube video series on building Legos or something like that. I don't necessarily have to show my face as a kid. I could do a lot of different things. So that would be my only concern today, just about the privacy issue and kids. But you could do all the other stuff and just let them lean into it. The AI thing is great. Have them. I'd have them testing out ChatGPT. I would probably even buy the $20 premium version so they can figure this thing out. Monitor them. Make sure you figure out what know what they're doing and stuff like that. Just like you want to do with social media. But I would lean into it. Absolutely. The one thing that I do agree, I don't agree with anything coming out of Florida, except for this social media ban for kids under 16. Like, I really believe that I mean, and I don't know if I really consider YouTube social media. I'm thinking more like TikTok and Instagram. So I would just be careful as you do that. Long story short, let them lean into it. Let them figure out what they like. Mr. B started at a very young age. And like you said, it took him 4 years till he got to 30,000 subscribers. And he was putting a lot of content on YouTube. He was very young. And so it doesn't happen right away, but it doesn't have to if you're a kid. You just want to learn like what your content tilt is, what your passion is. You might not know that till you start experimenting in certain areas. Just like if you were a writer, just like if you were a welder, anything, just start them off. What do you like to do? And lean into that, give them the opportunity and see what happens.
You're kind of like the master of ceremonies of your own book, because it's basically you said Joe Pulizzi and friends. So you have an intro and you hand it off to a lot of different people and they write different chapters. What did you learn from when you compiled all this information and you was putting everything together? Was there anything that you learned that you didn't know before from different people?
There was a lot. I would say it's interesting because as you know, I've written a few books before myself, and I have written a few with co-authors, but never with 32 authors. And there were some things that I didn't necessarily agree with all the time. For example, I'm not on TikTok. I'm somebody that focuses on just the channel. LinkedIn, for the most part, is sort of my social channel, and I don't necessarily feel I need to be on more social channels. There's some people that wrote in the book that are like, no, you should be on the channels wherever your customers are at. I think you can win either way. I think I'm more about focus. What I learned is that collaboration is really, really difficult. And trying to get everyone's point of view out and having a cohesive book was a challenge. Like, I did not think, Kevin, that this book would be as hard as it was putting it together. If you talk to Angela Long or Mark Maxheimer, who sort of brought this book together as managing editors, they they were tired. They were very tired by the end of this, putting it together. So I had the easy part of, I'm going to put an intro. I'm going to put the conclusion. I'll put some little sidebars in the rest of this book, but everybody has to write it. And then, of course, you have to review it, make sure that, okay, is this content that we want to put out there? It is not easy to do. And I can't say, like, if you said, Kevin, hey, I want to do a book and I've got 20 people that I want to write for it, I'd be like, be careful. It's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to write your own book. It's a lot easier to do something like if you wanted to write your own book and have it be a lot of different authors, where you would do something like this. So you'd have a podcast and then you take transcripts from that podcast to bring out the best of and put those books together like that. That is much, much easier than giving everybody sort of carte blanche, which was what we did. We're like, okay, who wants to do what chapters? But right off the bat, you got 6 people that want to write the same chapter. We're like, oh, okay, well, this is going to be more difficult than we thought. So that was just, I learned that I will not be doing a collaborative book like this again. But I'm so happy that we ended up doing it, because I feel like we've really got a piece of information that's going to help a lot of content creators rethink the business part of their journey.
I think it's really informative. You mentioned LinkedIn. What do people get wrong with LinkedIn? Because I think most people kind of use it. It's almost like kind of get your toe. Some people like yourself are really into it, and some people kind of dip their toe in it. It's like, well, I'm on and off. Well, what do people do right with LinkedIn, and what do people do wrong with LinkedIn?
If you're in business today, and you expect like somebody to hire you in the future, I think it's your responsibility to keep your LinkedIn account up like a living resume. And I think your living resume isn't just the stuff that you list. I'll give you this example. When we were looking for our managing editor for Content Marketing Institute years ago, I was looking on LinkedIn, and I was looking on Twitter at the time, and all that, because I wanted to know what they were saying. I wanted to know how they were communicating. And that was the number one thing for me. And that's what I use for hiring most people, is I try to see, okay, well, what are they putting out into the world? What do they stand for? Are they consistent? So those are the types of things that I look for. So I would say that if you're serious about your career, whatever it is, you should spend at least once a week putting something on LinkedIn that talks about who's your audience. And I think it's maybe a lot of people don't think it. Like, if you got a job working for somebody, if you're an architect, you might not think, oh, well, I have an audience and I should be putting something on LinkedIn. And I would say, this is you in the world. If you spent time to actually create an account, like, this should be important to you. You shouldn't just let it die on the vine. So put something out there. If it's going to work for you, you should communicate consistently. So if you got a regular job, you're not a content creator, that's fine. Figure out something once a week, once every 2 weeks. The e-newsletter component of LinkedIn is probably the most powerful thing that nobody uses, because somebody can subscribe to you. So if you have an let's say you wanted to launch an e-newsletter, you could realistically just launch that through LinkedIn, and people could subscribe and you can promote it. And then when they do, LinkedIn will actually send an email to your LinkedIn. Even though you don't have that email address, they will send it to the people that subscribe to that on your LinkedIn channel. And that's been very powerful for me. I started the LinkedIn newsletter about 2 years ago. I think I've got like 36,000 subscribers, and it's happened over a period of time. That's a really important audience for me. Now, do I want them to subscribe to my joepulizzi.com orange letter newsletter? Absolutely. That's number one. But a close number two is that LinkedIn audience. So I would say people don't realize that there are a number of influential people in your network that go to LinkedIn on a regular basis. It is the best social network, in my opinion. And it actually is a social network. It's less of a media company, more of a social network where your colleagues are hanging out. So how can you have a leg up on your competition for what you're doing? LinkedIn is an opportunity, I think.
You mentioned artificial intelligence, which made me start thinking about the future of content marketing, content creation. What trends do you see when it comes to content marketing and content creation? Is it AI, or is it something else that you're seeing right now?
Wow. I honestly, I don't know what's going to happen in the next 6 to 9 months when it comes to AI and content creation. Well, from what I've seen since November of 2022, when ChatGPT came out, has blown my mind. And the fact that I can create through DALL-E 3 these incredible images with a prompt, how I can use, I guess the key for content creators to make this thing work for them is not that it will create content. It will create content. But I think a lot of people are focused on, oh yeah, it can write an essay, it can write an article, it can write an email. Yeah, it can do all those things, but the most powerful thing right now is that it can be an assistant for you. Like you can use it, say, oh, you can brainstorm. I do it all the time. I'm like trying to think of different ways to take my story, and I will ask it like I'm talking to a person. Oh, what do you think about this concept? Like, and you can create your own. I haven't gone so far as to create my own personal GPT. I'm just using the professional version of Chat GPT. But I have a lot of people like Andrew Davis, who's our keynote at Content Entrepreneur Expo. He's going to go through how he's created his own GPT to do different functions for him in his speaking career, and say, oh, he has it set up where it can do the video for him, it can do the email for him, it saves him hours and hours and hours because he's put the time into it. So AI is important for you as a content entrepreneur if you put the time into it, but I would not use it for content creation. I would use it more for ideation. That said, does that mean that we should create all have a bunker or move out to Wyoming and should be scared about the future of humanity? I don't have I don't have that answer yet. It may be. I do think about worst case scenario because this thing is so smart, and we're not even seeing whatever version we're all using right now is not even the best version that's out there. That's already 9 months and 12 months ahead of time. So I'm like, this could get crazy.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to before we start recording, because let's go back to CEX a bit, because CEX is in Cleveland. What do people get wrong about Cleveland? What should we know about Cleveland, Joe?
I think that Cleveland, if you like the change of seasons, Cleveland is amazing. So that's if you want perfect weather all the time. Let's just talk about weather for a second. Cleveland might not be for you. You might want to go to San Diego, or you might want to go to Key West, or wherever you want to do. That's fine. But if you like the change of seasons, it's fantastic. And I think what a lot of people don't understand, it's like, okay, yeah, if you like sports, we've got the 3 major sports. Hopefully we'll have more in the near future. But I don't think people understand the music scene here. Of course, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but the music scene here is fantastic. The arts are incredible. Everything about University Circle, where you have these amazing institutions that are out there about the history and art. And nobody, I think, realizes we've got a park system here that wherever you're at in Cleveland, you're 5 minutes away of a world-class park system. That's what's amazing to me, where I can we can get off of this podcast and I can literally drive less than 5 minutes, or it's almost a walk for me here. I live in the west side of Cleveland, and I can go to this incredible park where there's families having a good time, where there's people out running and biking and doing those types of things. I don't think that people just visiting see that or understand that and know that that's a possibility. I mean, people know that in New York, where it's like, oh, I've got Central Park. I can see the park in the middle of New York. You can see that. People don't see it around here because the park system intertwines with all the suburbs. And I guess the other thing is, I think the people here are really, really friendly. When I go to some other cities, like when people are walking, it's still got a little bit of that Midwestern feel to it, where I think people are still friendly with each other. I'd like to think. I think it's great for families. And of course, I mean, I've done, as you know, when my wife and I owned Content Marketing World, the event, like we had every one of our events here in Cleveland. And then when we had the chance to move CEX to Cleveland, this is our 2nd year for CEX being in Cleveland. I love to bring people here to Cleveland so they can experience. I didn't even mention the food. Food is incredible. You can get to a world-class restaurant and almost any type of food that you want in Northeast Ohio. So, I mean, it's got a little bit of everything, except if you want weather that you can rely on. All right, we got great.
Right.
I was like April to October, you get really, really good weather, pretty consistent weather. But you know what?
Right.
You're going to get snow. You're going to get snow in February. It's just going to happen. There's nothing I can do about it.
Right. And also, when you go traveling, because we talked about hotels, what are some recommendations? Because you travel a lot. Like you're based in Cleveland, but you travel a lot around the world. What are some good hotel spots people should go to? Because now we're getting to the part of the year where people start flying around looking for places to stay.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this before. If if I'm traveling for business, I think about convenience. I think about no hassle. I think about where I can actually eat that's easy, and part of, because you never know. Like if you're going in for a business meeting, you don't know. Do I gotta go to the meeting? Am I going to wake up? Is there going to be breakfast there? Whatever. So I like for business hotels, I love Hilton Garden Inn. I love Hyatt Place. I love Hampton Inn. Those are places that all have breakfast as part of included into it's. They're pretty inexpensive when it comes to hotels. And I don't see a lot of up value. If you just stay into a Marriott proper and you stay into a Hilton proper, I think it's more hassle, because generally, if you stay into those hotels, you're probably paying for parking and you don't have breakfast included, and you might be on the 37th floor. And time is really important to me as a business traveler. So if I go to one of those other hotels, I know there's no more than four floors. I know they're going to have breakfast. I don't have to spend time on that. I know I've got free parking. So those are, I mean, I'm just looking for efficiency and time savings when it comes to that, because you got to realize you're not staying in your hotel that much. It's the same thing for like when I go to Las Vegas. I love going to Vegas, but the hotel to me is not very important, because hopefully I'm not spending a lot of time in the hotel. Same thing for like going to, it's like if it's got a good bed, I'm not going to be disturbed. I'm great. If I get all the other things included, it's perfect.
You're such a creative person. How do you avoid burnout or a creative roadblock? What kind of keeps your mind going? Because it seems like you're constantly moving, constantly thinking, but there has to be some times where it's like a car. Like sometimes it just doesn't start. How do you avoid burnout and creative roadblock?
Boy, yeah, I've dealt with this a lot, because when I wanted to write my novel, The Will to Die, which came out in 2019, I hit a point, Kevin, where I didn't think I could write it, because it's just like I would sit in front of my computer and I'd be like, nothing happened. And then I realized it's because I just need to get on the bike and start riding the bike. You just need to get up every day and create some kind of content. And once you do that, everything, you get into this rhythm. And it's weird. Like if you create content on a regular basis, you understand what I'm saying. Like you need to get into that rhythm so that you can start allowing your mind to flow and you start being creative. I'm creative when I get up every day in the morning and start writing. And then it's easier for me to write the next day. It's like working out, right? Or running. It's like if I just start running. I remember when I started running again in 2005 or something like that. I went a half mile and I was done. But then the next day I ran 3/4 of a mile. And 2 days after that, I ran a mile. It's the same thing with being creative in whatever you do, whether it's a podcast or whether it's writing or whatever. You got to do it consistently on a regular basis. And for back to the novel, when I probably didn't really start writing that novel till I was 4 weeks in to just every day, Monday through Friday. I'd take the weekends off. I was getting up in the morning and I was writing my 500 to 1,000 words a day. I never used that. But those 500 to 1,000, just like running, got me to the marathon. It gets me to writing, and I started getting that flow, and I started writing. I'm like, wow, I got this thing. So I would say to those people who are struggling with content, with like creative roadblocks, let's say, just start repeating the behavior every day, knowing that what you're going to put out early is not going to be any good. It's okay. You'll get there, and it'll be great. And after 3, 4, 5 weeks. I mean, it's just like building a habit. Like if you say, oh, I want to build a habit. I want to do intermittent fasting every day. Well, for that to be a habit, you got to go 66 days in a row. That's what the research tells you. Once you do that, you'll do it forever after that. So the same thing goes for writing or working out or running or anything that you're trying to do. So that would be my recommendation.
All right. Joe Pulizzi, thank you for the conversation. Tell us why people should pick up the Content Entrepreneur and why they should attend also CEX in Cleveland, Ohio.
Yeah. So first of all, you can go to thecontententrepreneur.com and pick up a copy. If you create content of any kind and you want to grow this into a business, it's an amazing resource. Myself and 32 other content experts put it together. I love what we've done. I really believe it will be helpful for you. And then if you want to meet the community of people that are doing that are actually living the life of a content entrepreneur or want to do that, that's what CEX is about. It's May 5th through 7th at Renaissance Hotel Cleveland downtown. As you said, we've got BJ Novak, we've got Roberto Blake, we've got LaTasha James, we got Justin Welsh, we got some of the greatest content creators that are out there doing it full-time as entrepreneurs. And I'm just excited to bring it to Cleveland. We're expecting about 400 coming to Cleveland and that's what I love. This, it's not like a super huge event. If you think about Content Marketing World was at 4,000, it's like 400 is a really good size to network and meet other people, not be intimidated, and kind of while you learn, you can sort of interact with some of these professionals that are doing it, but have probably been in the same place that you are a couple of years ago.
Real quick, I think I was mentioning in the book, sometimes you don't need the biggest audience. A lot of times, I think you said some people who are content creators, they have a successful life just having maybe 4,000 people. Like, you don't need a whole. I think people feel like you need to have millions upon millions of people to be successful. You only need like a few thousand people.
The average, when we did the survey of content entrepreneurs, we found that their average audience size is about 4,000. So yeah, I believe in, if you ever read Kevin Kelly's essay on 1,000 True Fans, I believe that's a thing. You need 1,000 people that are going to support you. We've seen it happen with Kickstarter campaigns, with e-newsletters, with training, with books. Those people that want to support you, that you're delivering really important information. You don't have to have 175 million like Mr. Beast does. Most of us have small, defined audiences that rely on us, that you have become their informational expert. So that's what I love about this. Is a lot of people think, oh, I got to get millions of views or my thing has to go viral. No, it doesn't. No, you just have to deliver valuable, relevant, compelling content on a regular basis to a specific audience, and you can be successful.
All right. Thanks a lot, Joe.
Kevin, thanks for everything. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you.